Hi, everyone. I'm Raymond Benson. Welcome to Hooked on Leiter, an episode by episode unpacking of The Hook in the Eye, my Felix Leiter novel. The folks at Ian Fleming Publications and I had this idea to do behind the scenes videos for each episode, much the same way that streaming television series do after an episode drops. Now, you'll probably all know by now that these were conceived to be supplements to the serialized ebook episodes. But due to some technical difficulties that none of us expected, those ebook file updates just didn't work the way we were led to believe they would. The entire novel was thus released on June 24th. Nevertheless, we decided to go ahead and post these Hooked on Lighter episodes at 2 week intervals over the summer as originally planned. Please note that almost all of them were already recorded before we made the decision to release the entire ebook. So these videos are still very episode centric. We hope you'll receive them now within the context in which they were intended. Again, a warning. If you haven't read the chapters discussed in these videos, there could be some spoilers. Hello, hello, hello. Here we are again. It's episode 7. A little time limit has been built into our story. There's a brief sequence where Felix phones Michael Brinkley. They talk in a sort of code because back then there were still telephone operators who had to connect calls, especially long distance and in rural areas outside of metropolitan cities. It was indeed possible that an operator could listen in on a conversation. Anyway, Felix tells Michael what he's learned about the New Mexico smuggling plan, and Brinkley gives him an extraordinary order. Felix is supposed to find a way to impersonate Jerry Bork and intercept that smuggled coin himself. Well, Felix is skeptical about it, but he's a loyal guy. Felix is the type of operative who obeys orders. Comes from the Marine in him. The scene in the honky tonk bar where Bork was once a bartender was fun to write because I was in a few of those types of places myself. They existed when I lived in Odessa and they still exist today. Lo and behold, who shows up? Alec Whitehall, the British guy they'd met in Roanoke, Virginia. What's he doing in Odessa? Felix's radar is definitely going haywire, as it should. We then go to Bork's house, which, like Ava's, is outside the city limits and isolated. There were indeed homes like this when I was growing up in Odessa, a ranch house out in the middle of nowhere, but a couple of miles from the town line where civilization had stopped for the time being. Eventually, Odessa would grow and expand and overtake all these places. Jerry Bork is obviously a guy who doesn't want to be in the position that his girlfriend Ava put him in. His devotion to her is at odds with his instinct for survival. Dora's behavior, it's really off the charts from what Felix has observed from her. Um, she now has a gun that he didn't know about. She's ready to murder Bork, and for what? And Felix notes that Bork is pointing fingers at her, calling her a traitor and accusing her of something she did to Ava's husband, Don. Dora tries to take control of the situation, and Felix does his best to stay on top of it. Then all hell breaks loose. Marco, if that's his name, and his henchmen, they arrive with dynamite. Well, in the chaos, someone gets killed. The bad guys want to take Felix and Dora with them in the Buick. Why? Why doesn't Marco just kill Felix and Dora? Felix knows there has to be something else going on underneath all this violence. Dora also admonishes Felix to take Bork's place if he can get away and meet up with Masters in New Mexico. Then a guardian angel of sorts intervenes. None other than Alec Whitehall shows up with a gun. Marco drives off with Dora in the Buick, leaving his two dead henchmen in front of Bork's half-demolished house, and poor Felix passes out from the beating he took. When he comes to a few minutes later, we learn that Whitehall is with the British Secret Service, not a double O, and he's after the same thing that Dora and Felix is after. Felix knows he has to take that phone call, though, from Masters at midnight. Luckily, the phone line still works. Whitehall brings up the McMahon Act of 1946, which did indeed lock away America's nuclear secrets from sharing it with the country's allies. I'm sure Britain wasn't happy about that. We now know that the test of a hydrogen bomb is imminent, so all this smuggling of nuclear plans out of Los Alamos begins to make sense. Whitehall confirms that the dynamite assassin is indeed named Marco, but he has his doubts that Marco is a SMERSH agent, mainly because Marco seems to be killing off the smuggling pipeline participants before they do the job. Is Marco after the coin too? When Felix finally gets that call from Masters, we learn that the handoff will be inside Carlsbad Caverns National Park, which isn't far over the state line between Texas and New Mexico. Felix withholds this information from Alec, but the two men do form an uneasy alliance for the time being. Well, Felix goes back to Odessa to the Elliott Hotel, which, by the way, was the oldest hotel in Odessa at that time. At least it was the oldest made out of brick and mortar. The building's still there, but it's no longer a hotel today. He's pretty torn up about Dora, but he knows Alec is likely correct that Marco and whoever he works for will interrogate her, get what they can from her, and kill her. And probably dump her body in the oil fields, which is something that did happen in West Texas. There were a few bodies found out there occasionally. Felix and Alec caravan out of Texas to New Mexico. White City is a little whistle stop tourist trap on the edge of Carlsbad Caverns National Park. The real town of Carlsbad is 30 miles away, just as I described. The Pueblo Motel did exist at that time. Felix is feeling very frustrated. There isn't much he can do but wait until Friday morning and the time of the handoff. But then he learns something about Alec Whitehall that changes everything. I guess we'll have to wait till the next episode to find out what happens. See you in 2 weeks. Raymond Benson, signing off.